you're not alone. There's nothing wrong with you just for having a hard time in life. Life is hard. This white rice represents the population of the world, okay? So 1 in 4 people will experience a mental health problem at some point this year, right? And the wild rice represents that 1 in 4. But when you mix them up like that, you realize, even if you just take one little pinch of people, so let's say that's the people in your life, even if you're lucky enough not to be struggling at this moment, the chances are you're going to be brushing shoulders with someone who is. So you are never alone when you're struggling. Someone else will be dealing with something. There is such power in being able to recognize that what you're experiencing is a normal human experience. Even when you feel like you're the only one experiencing it at that moment, you don't have to judge yourself as not being enough or not getting this thing called life correct or right. When you're really struggling, the best thing you could possibly do is...
This is wild. And I personally could not be more excited to have Dr. Julie in person today. She is a world-renowned clinical psychologist, a best-selling author of the mega blockbuster bestseller, Why Has Nobody Told Me This Before?, which has spent 109 weeks on the UK Sunday Times bestseller list. She has impacted millions of lives with the content she shares online, and now she's taken all of that wisdom and poured it into her new best-selling book, Open When. It's a book that you open when things are going wrong. It's a toolkit for life that will help you handle the ups, the downs, and everything in between. Because when life feels chaotic, you deserve clarity. When emotions feel overwhelming, you deserve tools that work. And when you feel stuck, you deserve a way forward. And today, you're going to get it. So without further ado, please help me welcome the incredible Dr. Julie Smith to the Mel Robbins Podcast. Julie Smith is in the house. Welcome to the Mel Robbins Podcast.
Thank you. I can't tell you how excited I am to be here. I'm a massive fan, so thanks for having me.
Well, I'm a huge fan of yours, and I am grateful that you hopped on a plane and you flew overseas to be here with us. And I want to start by telling you, your new book, Open When, is absolutely extraordinary. I am so proud of you. You have been in clinical practice for over a decade. You have millions of followers who hang on your videos and are so inspired and empowered by them. I would love for you to just tell the person listening, how do you think about what you're doing in your role as a clinical psychologist? Like, if you just explained it in just plain speak, how would you describe what you do for people?
Yeah, well, I've definitely been swimming against the tide professionally, because you've got the therapeutic stuff and the clinical work, but then moving that educational aspect of stuff out of the therapy room, because I recognize that it's not therapy skills, it's life skills, and it's stuff that I was finding helpful, my friends were finding helpful, my family were finding helpful. And a lot of these people that were coming along for therapy who perhaps weren't at that more severe end of the scale, they didn't have any sort of clinical diagnosis, or they were just struggling to deal with whatever life threw at them because they didn't trust in their ability to be able to deal with the emotion that came along with it. And they didn't necessarily have some of the skills that you need to be able to move through that emotion or to deal with the relationships or moods or whatever it was. And so once people had that information, they were just raring to go. And so I wanted to kind of get that out there and make it more available to people. And so that's really what I'm doing is sharing the stuff that it's the juicy bits that have come out of all this great stuff that is used in clinical practice. But we should all be using it, because whether your problems are big or small, it's still useful. And so, yeah, I'm kind of making sure that everyone is armed up to the hilt to deal with life, because life is really tough.
Dr. Julie, what would you tell someone who feels like they're the only person in their friend group or their family who's actually struggling?
Do you know what? We actually did a video on this quite a while ago, but we used lots of, I'm just going to pull these over here. We used lots of rice, just as this idea of representing the population of the world. So let's say the rice here, this white rice represents the population of the world. Okay. So you got all of this, and 1 in 4 people will experience a mental health problem at some point this year, right? And the wild rice represents that 1 in 4. But when you mix them up like that and you give it a little kind of mix, you realize that 1 in 4 is a huge number. And even if you just take one little pinch of people, so let's say that's the people in your life, even if you're lucky enough not to be struggling at this moment, the chances are you're going to be brushing shoulders with someone who is. So you are never alone when you're struggling, because even though people, you won't be able to see it in this visual way that you do with the rice, because people don't often talk about it when they're struggling, but someone else will be dealing with something. And so recognizing that we need to be kind to each other all the time.
Dr. Julie, why is it important for you to recognize that you're not the only one? Like, what benefit does it have on you if you are in a moment where you're struggling?
There is such power in being able to recognize that what you're experiencing is a normal human experience. Even when you feel like you're the only one experiencing it at that moment, knowing that that doesn't make you abnormal, that it's a normal part of the human experience that other people might have experienced at some point, even if they're not going through it now, means that you don't have to judge yourself as not being enough or not getting this thing called life correct or right. Normalizing something helps you to take the judgment out of it and start looking at it with curiosity.
The other thing that I love about it, and this visual is so helpful, is that there are going to be times where I am the wild rice that's going through something.
Yeah.
And then there'll be times that I'm the white rice and things are okay. And also understanding that we swap those positions in life, I think gives you perspective that where you're at right now, if you're struggling, isn't where you're always going to be.
Yeah, absolutely. It changes and it's temporary. And those thoughts are so simple and yet so powerful, because if you know that something is changeable and that sometimes you're okay and sometimes you're not, and that's a normal human experience, then you're able to accept it and allow it to pass over you in that way.
And it also gives you the motivation and hope that if you do use the tools that you share with us, that you'll pass through it a little quicker.
Yeah, there are so many things you can do to help bring yourself back to baseline, and to prevent it from happening so much of the time, or to prevent those emotions from being so intense. Lots of skills you can do that you can learn and get better at that help you do that.
Well, that's why I'm so glad that you're here, because I think that, you hear the word mental health and you think something big and scary, but no, you can struggle with friendship. You can struggle with loneliness. You can struggle with not having a direction in your career. You can struggle with money. There's so many things in life that cause you to doubt or overthink or feel down about yourself. And I'm so excited to dig into the tools. Dr. Julie, as a clinical psychologist, you say that everybody deserves to have an emotional toolkit. What does that mean?
There's loads to that depending on what you're facing at any given point. And I would kind of break it down into, there are certain things where people struggle, no matter what the details of your problem is and what life's throwing at you. A lot of people struggle with, emotions. So people will often come into therapy, diagnosable or not, people will come into therapy and they'll say, I've got these feelings that I don't want to have. I'm having too much of those. And I'm missing a lot of the nice, pleasant ones that I used to have more. I would like some of those back, please. Right. So a lot of it is there's some skills around emotion regulation. So there are things you can do to help you regulate the negative emotion, not make them disappear, so that there's a learning about, emotion is normal human experience and it's information. It's not something that's wrong with you. If you experience sadness or anger or, anxiety, it doesn't necessarily mean there's something wrong with you. It's a normal part of human experience. So often what we do in therapy is we take the judgment out of it and we look at it with curiosity instead. All emotion is information. It has something to tell you, usually about what you need or what's going on around you. So there's this kind of shift around, emotion regulation and learning about emotion. But then there's also stuff about thoughts that people struggle with thoughts. So, all this stuff online about, only positive vibes and don't have negative thoughts. And that really sets people up to feel like they're failing, because inevitably they have negative thoughts, they have judgments, they have self-critical thoughts. And when they have them, they then think they're failing at being a positive person. Whereas often what you would use in therapy that's really helpful, and I use this all the time, is the idea of kind of thought diffusion, where you get yourself a bird's eye view of what's going on in your head. And you kind of look at the pattern of, okay, these thoughts are coming in and those thoughts are coming in. And these are all possible perspectives that I can take on this, but I have the choice. So it's this idea that your attention is like a spotlight. And if all your kind of thoughts were actors on the stage, you've got control of the spotlight. So what most people try to do is scramble up onto the stage and pull actors off this. I don't want to think that, and I don't want to have that thought because that's horrible, and I just want to think this. And you can't control it, right? But what you do have is the spotlight. So all these different thoughts will be coming into your mind, and you can just choose what you're giving most of your time and attention to. And that will impact how you feel. You don't have to eradicate those other thoughts. There are other possible scripts that you could listen to, but you get to choose which ones you give the limelight to.
Well, and what's great about the way that you're framing this, because you're now talking about teaching us skills around managing emotions and feeling emotions and not being scared of emotions and processing them, and tools around understanding the way that your thoughts are shaping your experience and learning the skill of choosing what you want to think about or how you want to think about things. And we're going to get into those. We're going to take the rice away right now through the magic of editing, and then I'm going to jump right into the next question. So, Dr. Julie, you've been very open about your recent cancer diagnosis. Can you use that as an example of a situation where life sucks?
Yeah.
Things happen.
Yeah.
And how you were then using this toolkit that we're going to unpack for the person that's with us to navigate through that situation that just happened?
Yeah. Do you know what? And I'm generally not that public about my personal life a lot, but the reason I kind of shared about that was because I knew there would be other busy mums and dads like me who were tempted to put their own health on the back burner. So, that's just something I would say to anyone out there who is listening, who has any kind of health concern and is tempted to wait and put it off until they're less busy. Because I did. I was 6 weeks away from handing in the manuscript to Open When and discovered a lump in my breast. And I thought, should I just wait until I got this book off my desk before I go and I'd had lumps before. I knew it wasn't a nice process. And I thought, do I have the mental capacity for this right now? And, lots going on. But in the end, gave myself a bit of a talking to and thought that's a stupid idea. Went and got the tests, and time was my greatest tool. So my greatest weapon against this thing. And now I'm fine. But so anyone out there who has a kind of health concern and is tempted to put it off, don't, just do it. And I got diagnosed then. So that was about 6 weeks before I handed the book in. Then I got diagnosed. And I was about a week or two away from handing the book in. So I was at that stage where I was kind of reading through, editing, polishing things up, ready for my editor to see it. And I just happened to be reading through the chapter on when fear shows up.
Isn't life funny?
Oh my goodness. And I read it and I thought, this just isn't the kind of words I need to hear right now. It was very gentle, and a lot of people like that approach, but I just thought I need something much stronger here. So I hit delete and I sat there and then rewrote the whole thing. It was very much a shift in language that when something like that happens and life throws you a massive curveball like that, you're faced with the prospects of your own mortality. The fear is just catastrophic, right? I was like a rabbit in headlights. That's what I felt like, that I was just stunned. And because you don't find out everything at once either, you don't sort of find out and then find out what the treatment plan is and what the prospects are. You find out in bits and pieces. So there was so much uncertainty. And I did not want to feel like the prey. I didn't want to feel like I, was trying to work out which way to go. So I kind of used the power of that language to write myself, each chapter begins with a letter from me. So I wrote this letter to myself, and it's very much a sense of, you cannot control the fact that fear is here, right? But it can help you to move through this thing. It's now your responsibility to cultivate that courage to move through and out the other side. And there was lots of language around becoming the predator instead of the prey. And there's this fundamental difference between those two, right? So that prey is darting around, just avoiding threats and pitfalls and trying to survive it. Whereas a predator has a goal, has something in its sights, and it's on the front foot and it uses, all that drive and that action to make something happen. And so I thought, right, this cancer isn't coming after me. I'm coming after it. You better watch out. And I felt fundamentally, the situation was the same, but I felt fundamentally different in terms of how I was dealing with that. I wanted to be on the front foot, and I wanted to be and actually the quote at the beginning of the book, it was never going to be in the book, but I had to put it in the end because it was so fundamental to my experience, was get busy with life's purpose, toss aside empty hopes, get active in your own rescue if you care for yourself at all, and do it while you can. And it kind of makes me emotional just even saying it there, because it takes me back to that moment of, I had it on a Post-it note that was on my desk. And every time I read it, I felt that drive, that kind of fire in my belly to do something that was active in my own rescue. So, and I feel like it reflects everything, this whole journey, and all those people I was with in therapy who felt that they were at the mercy of their emotional experience. Even, it doesn't have to be those kind of extreme experiences, but normal emotional ups and downs, relationship ups and downs, they can feel so just chaotic, can't they? And often that chaos is, I don't trust myself to be able to cope with whatever comes up. And that's what fundamentally changes when you change the language and you choose to focus that spotlight of your attention where it is going to be most helpful to you, so that you can have this vision of, well, as I move through this and as I get out the other side, I want to look back and be so proud of how I dealt with it, and have that as your vision for how you're going to move forward, rather than the darting of the rabbit in the headlights. Which way is left? Which is right? I wanted to have that absolute focus, and it really worked for me.
Well, Dr. Julie, I think it's a unbelievably relatable story. And, I'm thinking right now of friends of mine who are sitting in a hospital and they have a loved one who is waiting heart surgery. And, it's just like every day holding on to hope. And even thinking of friends who just lost their job. And that whole flip from feeling like the prey, where something's coming after you and you have nothing that you can do, versus that flip to, no, I'm going to be the predator.
Yeah.
I'm going after it. That is an example of the kind of tools that you are so brilliant at giving to people in your private practice, to giving to all of us online. And I can see how that's already going to help somebody, whether they're dealing with a breakup or they're dealing with like just that sense of helplessness. That's what a prey feels like. We're going to think like a predator.
And I think the key there is that the fear is still there, right? We're not eradicating the fear. We're not making you feel like everything's fine, but it was a way that helped me to get through it. The idea that I could use fear to my advantage, I didn't have to make sure it had disappeared before I did something useful that could help me move forward. It just changed it felt fundamentally different.
Well, it is, because I think we've all heard the use the fear and do it anyway, or
Yeah.
like, let the fear fuel you. And like, what does that even mean? But if you then turn it into a tool and say, no, you're either the prey or the predator.
Yeah.
Choose.
Yeah.
And that helps you process the fear, which is a mentally healthy response to a cancer diagnosis,
Yeah.
or to a breakup, or to a job loss. But it helps you process it and then use it to your advantage,
Yeah.
which I just absolutely love. For somebody who's feeling extremely overwhelmed right now with a situation in life, or maybe they're grieving something, a relationship that's over, or they've lost somebody, do you have any other tools that you would recommend for what processing those emotions mean in that context?
Yeah. Because I think it's key here that I've never wanted to give the impression that I then didn't have some really dark moments in that, right? That I'm a human just like everybody else. And so dealing with something in that way doesn't mean that you don't feel overwhelmed at times. So, I had those moments, and the way that I deal with those sort of big emotions and that overwhelm was to allow it to be there and to recognize, I've sat in so many rooms with people and just helped contain those feelings and helped people through them, not to eradicate them, but to sort of hold their hand as they experience it. So I talk about that in the book, actually, this idea that your inner world is a bit like a sauna. There are benefits to being there, but only if you don't stay too long. So, when you're really struggling, the best thing you could possibly do is reach out to a human being that you trust and connect in that moment, because they will help you to kind of regulate that emotion. But if you don't have someone there in that moment, being sort of in a position where you're not trying to numb it, you're not trying to push it away, you're just allowing it to wash over you, then that's exactly what it will do. And I did a video ages ago about the idea that if you stand in the ocean up to your waist, right, and the waves are coming, and when the wave comes, it lifts you off your feet a bit. So imagine if you try to hold back one of those waves, you're going to end up taking a tumble and mouthful of water, and it's not going to be pretty. But if you accept that those waves are coming, then you do something different, right? So maybe you turn to the side, or you brace yourself and bend your knees so that when you do come off your feet, you're going to land again. And in the acceptance of that sort of emotional wave coming, you're better prepared to then deal with what it does to you. And it will naturally pass without causing you too many problems. And that's really what emotion does. If you can kind of soothe your way through it, knowing that it's temporary, knowing that it will, even if it goes away and it comes back again, you can do that again and again and on repeat, and listen to what it says. At that point, when I felt that overwhelm, it was telling me I was shit scared about what was going to happen to my children, and what was going to happen to me, and what the future held, and how sick I might become, and all those kind of things. And I didn't have the answers to those things in that moment, and so the fear was there, and that was okay. And then we focused on, okay, what's the next step that I need to take in order to keep moving through it.
So that's almost an example of another tool, is visualizing yourself in an ocean, and understanding that when the emotion rises of overwhelm or grief or anger or sadness or fear of whatever, just let it rise, and visualize yourself kind of letting it fall.